My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a former lead software engineer. The fluorescent lights of Brandon Thorne's office hummed, reflecting off the polished surface of his oversized mahogany desk. My hands were clasped in my lap, knuckles white, as he leaned back in his leather chair, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "Sarah," he began, his voice dripping with an artificial regret, "we've decided to go in a different direction. Your code, it's just not up to our current standards. Frankly, it's bad code." The words hung in the air, a deliberate insult aimed at the core of my professional identity. I felt a hot flush spread across my face, but I kept my gaze steady, meeting his smug eyes without a flicker. He was talking about the billing system, the very heart of Viridian Financial Systems, a system I had built and maintained for nearly a decade, the same system that processed millions of dollars in transactions every single day without a hitch. He had no idea what he was truly dismissing. I simply nodded, a tight, almost imperceptible movement, and then, a quiet thought formed. Let's see how well your current standards hold up when the foundation crumbles. To understand the weight of that moment, you need to know about Viridian, and about the system Brandon so casually dismissed. I joined the company right out of college, fresh-faced and eager. Viridian wasn't a tech giant, but a solid, regional financial services provider, specializing in payment processing and loan management for small businesses. My first big project, the one that truly defined my career there, was rebuilding their core billing system from the ground up. The old one was a patchwork of ancient scripts and manual processes. I spent years on it, meticulously crafting every line of code, optimizing databases, building robust error handling, and integrating it with every other critical system in the company. It was my baby, a sprawling, complex, but incredibly stable piece of engineering. I wasn't just a coder, I was the system's institutional memory, its architect, its chief mechanic. When a new feature was needed, I knew exactly how it would ripple through the existing structure. When a bug popped up, I could trace its lineage back to a single forgotten semicolon or a nuanced data type mismatch. For years, the billing system ran like clockwork, its status dashboard a comforting sea of green lights. My desk was a fortress of monitors, one always showing that green light, a silent testament to the thousands of hours I'd poured into ensuring Viridian's revenue stream flowed uninterrupted. Then, about a year and a half ago, Brandon Thorne arrived. He was the CEO's only son, fresh out of an MBA program from an Ivy League school, full of buzzwords and grand visions. He was given the title of Head of Digital Transformation, a role that seemed specifically designed to let him make a big splash without actually understanding the deep end of the pool. From day one, he saw the billing system not as a marvel of stability, but as an outdated monolith. He'd walk by my desk, glance at my green-lit dashboard, and shake his head. "Legacy tech, Sarah," he'd say, a condescending note in his voice. "We need to modernize, innovate, disrupt." His initial attempts to modernize were mostly superficial. He wanted to change the UI, add flashy dashboards that pulled data from the system without understanding the intricate queries needed to ensure accuracy. I patiently explained dependencies, the delicate balance of real-time processing versus reporting, and the sheer volume of transactions the system handled. He'd nod, eyes glazing over, then bring it up again a week later as if I hadn't said a word. "Can't we just port it to the cloud?" he'd asked once, as if the entire complex financial logic was a simple photo album. I spent an hour detailing the regulatory compliance, the data security protocols, and the re-engineering effort required. He just shrugged. "Sounds like you're resistant to change, Sarah." That was the first red flag, not on my dashboard, but in my gut. He wasn't interested in understanding, he was interested in changing for the sake of change, and in getting credit for it. My role, my knowledge, my years of dedication, were becoming obstacles to his narrative. Things escalated quickly after that. Brandon started pushing hard for a seamless, API-first payment gateway to replace parts of the existing billing system. I didn't disagree with the concept, but the implementation was critical. I identified a major vulnerability. The proposed new gateway had a different data validation schema for transaction IDs, and if not handled perfectly, it could lead to duplicate payments or, worse, lost transactions in the legacy system. I wrote a detailed memo, outlining the specific risks, proposing a phased rollout with extensive testing, and emphasizing the need for a robust middleware layer. I even suggested we bring in an external consultant to validate my concerns, just to show I wasn't being territorial. Brandon dismissed it out of hand. "Sarah, you're overthinking this. We're agile here. We move fast. Your concerns are just slowing us down." He called my memo fear-mongering. He then started reassigning my most experienced team members, Mark and Chloe, to his new Innovation Lab projects. "We need our best talent on the future, not the past," he declared in a team meeting, looking pointedly at me. I was left with 2 junior developers, bright kids but lacking the deep institutional knowledge needed to navigate the system's complexities. My requests for necessary infrastructure upgrades, like new database servers or increased memory allocation during peak processing times, were denied. Budget constraints, Brandon would say, while simultaneously approving exorbitant expenses for his innovation lab, mostly fancy new office furniture and a subscription to a trendy project management tool. The billing system, though robust, was like an aging athlete. It needed careful management, regular checkups, and the right support. Brandon was stripping away its trainers and nutritionists, while simultaneously demanding it run faster marathons. I saw the stress indicators beginning to flicker on my internal radar, even if the external green light still shone. I started keeping a private log of all my warnings, all the ignored requests, all the corner-cutting decisions Brandon was making. It felt like a grim necessity, a quiet act of self-preservation. The final straw came with a minor, non-critical bug. A specific edge case where a very rare combination of payment method and discount code caused a fractional cent discrepancy in a monthly report. It was an accounting nuisance, not a system-breaking flaw, and it had been on my backlog for a low-priority fix. Brandon discovered it, or rather, someone in accounting flagged it to him, probably hoping he'd be the hero. He blew it completely out of proportion. He called a special meeting, pulling in senior leadership, including his father, the CEO. He projected a screenshot of the code responsible, a complex block of logic that handled multiple conditional discounts. "Look at this," he declared, pointing dramatically at the screen. "This is what I mean by bad code. It's convoluted, inefficient, and frankly, sloppy. This is why we need new blood, new approaches." My explanation, that the complexity was necessary to handle a dozen different legacy discount structures and that simplifying it would break existing contracts, fell on deaf ears. His father, while not as aggressive, listened intently to Brandon's performance. The CEO, Mr. Thorne, was a businessman, not a technologist. He trusted his son, and he saw a clear, confident presentation. 2 days later, Brandon called me into his office. That's when he delivered the line, "Your code, it's just not up to our current standards. Frankly, it's bad code." He handed me a termination letter, effective immediately. My access to Viridian's systems was revoked before I even left the building. My green light dashboard was now someone else's problem. My initial reaction was a mix of shock and cold fury. But beneath it, a chilling clarity settled in. Brandon wasn't just ignorant, he was actively dismantling the very infrastructure that kept Viridian afloat, all to make himself look good. He saw me not as an asset, but as a living, breathing reminder of the system he wanted to replace, a system he didn't understand. He needed to eliminate me to clear the path for his innovation. He wanted to be the hero who modernized the company, and I was the old guard, the bad code he had to purge. He genuinely believed my code was bad, not because he understood it, but because it wasn't his. And he believed the system would continue running smoothly without me, because in his mind, software was just a series of interchangeable parts. I walked out of Viridian that day with a box of personal belongings and a strange sense of detachment. I hadn't actively sabotaged anything. My code was clean, well documented internally, and resilient. But its resilience depended on my specific, almost intuitive understanding of its quirks, its hidden dependencies, and the precise sequence of operations needed to keep it humming. I had built a system that, while robust, was also highly customized to Viridian's unique business logic. I knew where the tripwires were, the specific configurations that, if altered even slightly, could cascade into unforeseen failures. My knowledge transfer session, mandated by HR, was a joke. Brandon assigned a new, inexperienced hire to sit with me for 2 hours. I gave them the standard rundown, pointed to the documentation, explained the basic architecture. But I didn't, and couldn't, transfer the decade of muscle memory, the thousands of small, undocumented adjustments I made daily, the specific monitoring thresholds I'd set for OBSC. Your performance metrics, or the exact order of operations for the monthly financial close that prevented deadlock conditions. Brandon had rushed the process, eager to get rid of me, and the new hire simply wasn't equipped to absorb the full complexity. I left a system that looked functional on the surface, but was, in my absence, a house of cards waiting for the wrong breeze. 2 weeks after I was fired, I got a call from Mark, one of my former senior developers whom Brandon had reassigned. His voice was tight with stress. "Sarah, something's going on with the billing system. Transactions are getting stuck. We're seeing duplicate payments for some clients, and others aren't getting billed at all." Brandon tried to push through that API-first gateway update he was so keen on, and it just broke things. He sounded desperate. "They're asking about the transaction ID_validation_schema memo you wrote. Do you still have it? Can you tell us what you meant by cascading data integrity failure?" I paused, picturing my carefully documented warnings, dismissed as fear-mongering. "Mark," I said, my voice calm, "I was fired for having bad code. My expertise was deemed unnecessary. All my warnings were documented and submitted to Brandon. I no longer have access to Viridian systems, nor am I employed by them. My advice now would be to refer to the comprehensive documentation I left behind, and the new processes Brandon implemented." It was a polite refusal, but firm. I wasn't going to bail out the very people who had scorned my work and dismissed my warnings. I had done my part. The calls and emails continued for the next few days, growing increasingly frantic. First from Mark, then from other developers, then even from HR, asking if I could consult for a few hours. I politely declined each time, reiterating my position. The billing system, that robust engine of Viridian's revenue, was beginning its slow, painful collapse. The API-first gateway had indeed introduced the data validation nightmare I had warned about, but without my specific, custom-built middleware and error-handling routines, the system couldn't cope. Transactions were getting corrupted, payments were being misapplied, and the automated reconciliation processes were grinding to a halt. Then came the news reports. Discreet at first, mentioning technical difficulties at Viridian financial systems, then escalating to significant service disruptions affecting hundreds of small business clients. One article quoted a frustrated business owner whose payments hadn't been processed in days, threatening legal action. The financial implications were staggering. Not only were they losing current revenue, but they were facing potential lawsuits, regulatory fines, and a mass exodus of clients. The company's stock, publicly traded though not on a major exchange, began to tank. Brandon Thorne, the head of digital transformation, was nowhere to be seen in the news. Instead, the CEO, his father, was making public apologies, promising swift resolution and full accountability. He announced an internal review and the immediate halting of all modernization initiatives until stability was restored. The irony was palpable. The very system Brandon called bad code was now the unfixable mess. It wasn't that my code was bad, it was that his changes, without understanding, had broken its delicate equilibrium. I eventually found a new job, a lead role at a smaller, more appreciative tech company, where my meticulous approach was valued. I still kept an eye on Viridian from a distance. The billing system didn't just collapse overnight, it was a slow, agonizing unraveling that took months to stabilize, and even then, it never fully recovered its reputation or its client base. They had to bring in an expensive external consulting firm, who, I heard through the grapevine, eventually rebuilt the system from scratch, confirming many of my original design choices and warnings in the process. Brandon Thorne was quietly reassigned to a non-technical role, far from any critical systems. Sometimes, I think back to my old desk at Veridian, to the 3 monitors always displaying the system's health. The central one, the most important, always glowed a reassuring green. I imagine now what it must look like for them, if it's even running. Probably a chaotic mess of red alerts, flashing warnings, and error messages. The green light I had so carefully maintained for so long had finally gone out, not because the bulb was bad, but because someone decided it was ugly.